Thank you, Han, for agreeing to do this interview. I think our viewers will greatly appreciate your insight and perspective. So you have a fascinating story, and I think the fact that you're just now graduating from high school adds a lot of credibility to your story because it's happened to you just so recently. So let's begin with your elementary school education. Can you tell me, which yeshiva did you attend for elementary school?
So I grew up in Williamsburg, and I went to a Pupa Yeshiva in elementary and middle school.
Does Pupa Yeshiva have another name?
It's called Yeshiva Yaffed Pupa. Pupa is the name of the sect, and Kilsak, which is the name, like how the yeshiva is called.
Do you remember where the yeshiva is located?
So in elementary and middle school, there's a big building. It's at Division and Wilson in Williamsburg. And then in yeshiva, which is high school, it's located in Red Oak, which is a non-Jewish neighborhood.
Do you recall at what age you began receiving secular instruction?
The first time we had any secular education started in Kitta Gimel, which roughly translates to second, third grade.
So at 7 years old is the first time you began receiving instruction?
Yeah, we began learning the ABCs, basically. We had nothing else before.
What time did you arrive to yeshiva?
9 o'clock.
And you had religious studies till?
Till 4.
And then you had secular studies for approximately how long?
For about an hour and a half. I mean, yeah.
Okay.
And that's at the end of the day. It should be noted that everyone is already exhausted and tired, and after an entire day of religious studies.
What subjects were taught during those 90 minutes of secular studies?
Sure. So throughout all my years that I had secular education in yeshiva, we only covered English and arithmetic. So when I say English, I mean just basic, like first starting in second grade with the ABCs, and then we continued up to basic spelling, and that's basically it. So and even when we learned English, the teachers always only spoke in Yiddish. So we would have a discussion in class, in English class, and we would only talk in Yiddish. The teachers and the students were all conversing Yiddish. And then for math, we had the most advanced math that we ever covered was division, never even fractions.
Mm-hmm. Wow. How about science?
No science, no history, no social studies, no art, or any other stuff.
How about gym?
No gym.
Mm-hmm. Any kind of physical education?
No physical education whatsoever.
Wow. How about when you were 11 years old? Take us through a day of that, year.
Sure, so it's about the same thing, except we started school a little earlier. So instead of starting 9 o'clock, we started at 7:45. And then we prayed together, and then we had breakfast. And then basically the same schedule. Like, we just had religious studies until 4 o'clock, and then an hour and a half of secular studies.
And then at what age did you stop receiving secular studies?
So in Kitta Tes, the last year of middle school, which roughly translates to around 7th, 8th grade, we, instead of finishing school at 5:50, we had school another hour, for another half an hour until 6:20. And then the hour and a half that was previous all the other years for secular education was taken away, and we only studied religious studies. So basically, we started school at 7:45 until 6:20, and the entire day was spent mostly on religious studies and some of it for prayers, but no secular studies whatsoever.
So 11 hours in yeshiva as a 13, 14-year-old?
Yeah.
And no
secular studies whatsoever.
How about the following year? You were, let's say, in like 8th grade or 9th grade, right? So first year of Yeshiva Katana, right? You're ready bar mitzvah, you're now in Yeshiva Katana. What did your day look like over there?
Yeah, so the next year we started high school, and then we moved from Williamsburg to Red Oak, which was the official, like the high school building. And then we started school at 7 a.m. until 8 p.m. That's 13 hours every day. And no secular studies whatsoever. We were taught, like, no English, no math, no science, no history, nothing. Like, even the little English and math that we had in middle school was taken away.
Mm-hmm. Did you communicate in English with your friends or with your teachers?
When I had secular...
No, in high school.
Oh, no, of course.
Did you even see anyone who was not ultra-Orthodox when you spent 13 hours a day in yeshiva?
All the staff, all the teachers, staff, principals were all Hasidic Orthodox Jews. And the only people now were the janitors.
In elementary school, where you received 90 minutes of secular education, and you said you did learn some English and basic arithmetic, did you ever learn how to write an essay?
So, no, we never learned writing at all. We, for example, we even had spelling. So we would study like a list of words, how to spell them, but we didn't even learn the definition of the vocabulary. Mm-hmm. So like we never spent any time on like writing at all. Like I never put even a paragraph like in all my time that we had secular education.
How about learning what a molecule was? Did you ever learn what a molecule was in elementary school?
Never.
High school?
Like even my friends now, like currently, like a lot of them really bright students and friends. Like even today, they've never even heard of the word molecule or atom.
By your friends now, you mean
my Hasidic friends, my childhood friends.
In elementary and high school, did you ever learn about the Civil War?
No, we never learned anything, any history.
Did you ever learn about what led to the Civil War?
We didn't learn any, except like for Jewish history, we didn't learn anything about any other cultures or any other history, like about the United States or about other people or...
All right, so now tell us about you leaving the yeshiva.
Sure, yeah. So I was in yeshiva in high school for about a semester and a half. Like it's called a zaman, which roughly like it's about a semester, and then I dropped out in the middle of my second semester in yeshiva. And the reason why, like there were many reasons, but one of the main reasons was because I was exposed to some basic like science and other cultures from outside of school, and I was really like intrigued and just like fascinated by it. That I realized that there's a whole world out there that I don't have access to, and that I wouldn't be able to ever explore if I stayed in the school I'm at. So, like, obviously it wasn't an easy choice, like, decision, and after months and months of, like, changing my mind, I finally decided that it's worth it to leave, like, even though I know I'm going to face, like, crazy challenges, I decided it's still worth it for me to leave and be able to just pursue my passions and be able to just study and pursue what interests me and what fascinates me.
So, you're talking about it being a challenge. Was it a difficult transition?
Definitely. So there were there were a lot of like, small obstacles, but there were two like main challenges. One was socially and academically. So first of all, I mentioned the most advanced math we learned was division. No science, no history. I was 15 years old, and I barely knew English. So obviously 15 years old, like who grew up in New York City and doesn't know English and just doesn't even know fractions. Like transferring out to like a school outside the community was obviously like...
Were the subjects you learned in public school any different than the ones you learned in high school and yeshiva?
I mean, I feel like the question should be rephrased if they were in any way similar, because it was polar opposites. In yeshiva, we only had religious studies, and in public school, obviously, we only like the opposite. We didn't have any religious studies, and we just had like science, math, history, and all that other secular subjects.
In public school, were there any new faces compared to the yeshiva?
I mean, certainly. I mean, in yeshiva, the only people I saw around me were all like almost similar to me, all like black hat, long curls, black coat. In public school, it's just like everyone looks different. Everyone has their own culture, their own background, and it's just so exciting to be around people who like don't exactly like have every single like idea as you. And like you're just exposed to so many new ideas and so many different viewpoints and perspectives.
Did you feel welcome in public school?
So yeah, I was very welcome, and I was like very surprised, even though I shouldn't have been, because growing up we always believe that all the people out there like hate us, and like everyone who's not like part of us is jealous of us, and so they hate us, and I'd never be able to be accepted anywhere else. And then like even though I did not fully believe it, because otherwise I never would have left, but I still felt like maybe there's like some truth that like I'm going to be an outsider. And then I came with the mindset that I'm different than everyone, because like I grew up Hasidic and I didn't. But then I soon realized that like in a Hasidic school, everyone has the same background. So anyone who is slightly different is considered like is different. But in public school, everyone is different because everyone has a different background. Everyone comes from a different place. So by being different, you are part of the whole. You're not different. That makes you like one of everyone, because everyone has everyone has their own heritage and their own different tradition and own different background and different family. And
approximately how many grades were you off in terms of your academic knowledge or achievement? When you got to public school, where were you academically compared to the rest of your class?
So before I went to public school, I went for 1 year. I went to a modern Orthodox yeshiva. They had half a day religious studies and a half a day secular studies. And there I was able to catch up a lot, because I spent a whole year there, and also in the summer I self-studied a lot. So I was able to catch up quite a bit, surprisingly. So when I got there, I was like somewhat behind, but I was able to catch up throughout, like since I dropped out of yeshiva for the like about a year and a half or so until I got to public school. I was able to catch up a lot, and yeah.
That's very impressive. In this last year of high school, you just graduated, right? Congrats. In this last year of high school, tell me some of the subjects you learned.
Sure. So this year I took AP Biology, which was the first time I learned biology. And then I took computer science, English.
How old are you?
I'm 19.
How old are the rest of your classmates?
So I'm about a year and a half older than most of my classmates since I started a little late.
How many of the subjects that you learned this year in high school would you have learned in yeshiva if you had stayed?
None.
About how many of the boys in Pupa High School that also just graduated this year would you say graduated with a high school diploma?
None of them. They said they can't barely communicate in English, and most of them they never even heard of the word atom or algebra, and they don't even know fractions.
Do you think the government knows about what's happening in these yeshivas?
I mean, we've been going to these meetings and to the Department of Education and telling them, like, I've been interviewed by the Department of Education and told them exactly what's going on. So they know, and a lot of other yeshiva graduates have spoken to the Department of Education and given, like, the detailed account of their experience in the Hasidic Yeshiva. So they definitely know exactly what's going on and what's being taught and what's not being taught.
If the government wanted to visit a yeshiva to determine whether they're teaching secular studies, so they tell the yeshiva in advance that they're going to come visit on this specific day, would there be a change in the way the yeshiva would operate on that day?
Definitely. I mean, we would have... sure, so when inspectors would come, everything would change. Like, just an example, like, we had inspectors, for example, for food. They would see what kind of food is given, and the school would always know beforehand the day they would come. And then that day we would have completely different food, much better. And that was the one day that everyone was waiting, like, to go to lunch because it was, like, so good. And we had another time inspectors came, and then we had a carnival, which was the only time I remember having a carnival in all of high school. So they know when the inspectors are going to come, and they accommodate. They know how to impress them and make it, like, put up a play.
Some people say leave the government out of it. Like, don't involve the government. These are private schools. They should be able to operate however they want. What do you think?
So I'll just give, like, my story. I wanted to first transfer to a school outside of the community, but my parents didn't let me. So I went to speak to a lawyer, and then I told him that I received no secular education, and all I wanted to go to a school outside the community where I can receive a secular education. Well, my mother is not giving me permission, so is there anything I can do about it? And then he told me, he asked me a lot of questions, and eventually he came back and he said that there's no way, I have to, since my mother doesn't let me go to a different school, I have to stay there. So basically, essentially, the legal system requires me to stay in a school that teaches no secular education.
That violates the law.
Yeah, that violates the law. It's not that the government is just turning a blind eye and, like, not doing anything, but in fact forces minors to attend that school if their parents want so. So minors don't, if a minor wants to go to a school that has a secular education, the government forces them to go to that school.
What are your plans now?
I got accepted into the University of Pennsylvania, which I'll be attending next year in the fall, and I'm really excited. It's like a whole thing that was my dream, to go to college, which I always thought is, like, impossible, just like a unrealistic reality, but it happened, and I'm incredibly excited.
All right, you're clearly smart, right? You left yeshiva and you quickly integrated into public school, which is a tremendous feat. And now you're headed to this prestigious university. Congratulations, by the way. So do you think there are other kids like you who might be smart and might be capable of doing what you're doing?
So, I mean, there certainly are people out there who can do it, but even for me, like, it sounds like, yeah, it was just easy, I left, but I didn't go into all the details of all the struggles of losing my childhood friends, of having to self-study for the entire summer, and just, even now I'm still, like, struggling with some basic stuff. So even though I was able to, achieve my dream, it wasn't easy, and I'm still facing challenges as a result of it.
Well, give me some example. What kind of challenges do you still face?
I'm still facing some minor challenges, like my English and, like, my math. I'm pretty, like, that's one thing that's terrible, is math, for example, right? I'm pretty advanced in math. I took calculus BT last year. But when it comes to, like, basic arithmetic, I'm terrible. And the reason why, because everyone had so much practice as a child. Like the entire elementary school I spent practicing, but I basically crammed everything in the summer, which I was able to learn, but I never really got used to it. So like I know it, but just simple arithmetic I always mess up because I had as a child I never had practice with it. So that's like one thing that I remember last year taking calculus BC, and I was top of my class knowing like I knew all the advanced stuff, but just a simple like arithmetic I would always, on the exams I would always mess up just because I wasn't used to it.
If parents don't like it, they can simply take their kids out and put them into public school. You're the biggest proof that it's possible. Eventually you were able to get into public school. Why can't other people just do that?
As I said, when I initially left, it was extremely difficult. I had both academically and socially. So first of all, I lost almost all my childhood friends. Because in the Hasidic Yeshiva, it's not just a school, but it's basically a part of the community. It's integral to like the community. So if you don't go to the community school, you basically considered an
outcast?
Outcast, rebel or whatever, traitor, like whatever the word is.
Oh, I see.
So like, going to a different school doesn't just mean that you're just going to a different school. It just means that you're going to be ostracized from your community and from your friends and from your family.
But still, that being said, you succeeded very well in public school, okay? Why can't other parents take their kids out of yeshiva and put them into public school?
First of all, most of them wouldn't want to, just because public school is seen as this terrible place that just corrupts everyone. And
what you're saying makes sense. They consider public school as corrupting, right? So, which brings me to the next point. You're proof that education corrupts, right? I mean, at least that's what some people would say. So, to people who say that Chaim Fishman is proof that education can corrupt you and lead you to not be Hasidic anymore, what would you say?
I mean, the only reason why I had to leave the community and go to public school was because I couldn't get the education I wanted within the community. So if the schools would provide basic secular education, then I would have left in the first place. So the only reason why people are forced to leave if they really want education is because they can't find it in the community.
Wow, it's an interesting perspective. Would you encourage other yeshiva students to switch out and enroll in public school?
I don't want to give like specific advice. It's not like a yes or no. It's a very individual. Depends on the person. Depends like why they want to go and what exactly they're. Yeah, that's it. It's like it's not a yes or no question. It depends on the person. It's not. Yeah.
So it depends on the person, but your experience, was it a positive one?
Yeah, my experience was definitely. I mean, I was like the first half year was like a little bad just because it took me time just a culture shock to get used to it.
To adjust,
just to make friends and just get used to the environment. But now, like it took much. Like I expected never to fit in, and after half a year I fit in, which was a big shock to me, and like a pleasant shock.
Pleasant surprise.
Yeah, pleasant surprise. So for me, I definitely had a positive experience, but it's not. Obviously, it's a individual thing. Like I can't just say yes or no. It just depends on the person. Depends on a lot of different factors.
Fine, but if a kid does want to get an education and they're not getting it in yeshiva, would you advise them to switch out and to go to public school?
If they feel like that's what they want and they really thought it through and they're very like, and they're going to be a lot of challenges, like especially like just catching up and getting used to it, and if they feel like that's what they want and they're ready for it, then yeah, definitely yes. But
so what would your message be to Mayor deBlasio and to the New York State Department of Education Commissioner be?
So this is a very serious issue, both from a lot of different perspectives. It's an economic issue, both like it increases poverty tremendously. If you just look at the statistics, like Hasidic neighborhoods tend to have extremely high numbers in like below poverty and Section 8. And it's a legal issue, of course. It clearly violates the New York State law. And it's also, I think, an ethical issue that you're taking children and like smart and motivated children, and you're depriving them of skills that they will need for their future. And what's sad is that these children are really smart and motivated. They're in school 13, 14 hours a day, and they're in New York City, not in some third world country. They're surrounded by all these opportunities, and yet they don't have access to them. And I would just say, like, imagine like if you were one of those kids. Imagine like if you grew up deprived of all the skills that they are currently deprived. Like where would you now be? Do you think you would have been able to achieve what you now have? And the answer is of course not, because without having a basic education in English, math, and like just basic cycle education is just, you're basically crippled for life. Like when I say we, like in middle school, when we had cycle education, all the teachers were all Hasidic. They were all grew up in the community and they had the same education we got. So basically means they really knew the subjects that they were supposed to teach. So for example, my uncle, he was an English teacher in one of the community schools, community boys schools. And then one day my brother went over to his house and he sees his wife teaching him multiplication. So he was obviously shocked and he asked him, like, what's going on? Like, why are you teaching him how to do, like, times? So they explained that he's supposed to teach this his students the next day and he doesn't know it. So his wife is teaching it to him now, so he knows how to teach it tomorrow for his students.
That's amazing. How did his wife know multiplication?
So girls do, fortunately, they do receive, I mean, definitely below par compared to other schools that are not in the community, but they do receive substantial cycle education. For example, my sisters, they're able to communicate in English and they do know basic arithmetic and even algebra.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then I had another teacher who I would often ask different questions, like what some words mean, like words in our spelling book. I would ask him, like, what does it mean? And then he would answer me seriously, oh, I'll ask my wife tonight. And the next day he'll come back and like tell me what it means.
Sounds like a love story.
Yeah.